Welcome back to Just the Tip Tuesday podcast, a collaboration between Cut-Rite and Game Tech. We've got something a little special lined up for you over the next few weeks. As many of you know, when we first kicked off this show, one of our very first series was with none other than Paul Medel, the elk nut himself. Paul is a wealth of elk hunting knowledge, and he's been a huge part of what we do here at Game Tech. In fact, he brings all the knowledge to the Elk Nut mobile app that so many of you use in the field. Back when we launched this podcast, we sat down with Paul for an in-depth series covering elk calling strategies, reading elk behavior, and how to put yourself in the best position for success as a do-it-yourself elk hunter. Now, those conversations have become some of our most downloaded and most talked about episodes. But since they were released a few years ago, many of you may not have had the chance to hear them, or maybe you'd like to go back and refresh before the upcoming season. So we thought this would be a perfect time to bring those episodes back, unedited and in full, as part of a special Elk Nut Rerun Series. Whether you're brand new to elk hunting or you've been chasing bugles for decades, the insights Paul shares are timeless. He breaks down not just what to do in the elk woods, but why bulls respond the way they do, and how you can adapt your approach to work every elk encounter. So sit back, enjoy, and let's rewind to our very first conversation with the Elk Nut, Paul Medel.
Welcome out to the third episode of the Elk Nut series on the Got Game University podcast. This is Taylor Tibbetts, and I'm here with my colleague Ryan Smith from Got Game Tech, and we've got the Elk Nut, Paul Medel, on the line. How you doing, Paul?
Good, we're back.
We are, as promised, right?
Absolutely.
So, Paul, like how we start every episode, we just want to answer the cliffhanger question that we left for the listeners last week. Maybe we'll put Ryan on the spot this time.
Well,
See if I can answer it.
well,
So
you
do you
know,
want to remind us of the question?
if he's gonna answer it, I want an explanation behind his answer too. See, he didn't know that was coming.
Okay, let's hear the question, Paul.
What was the question?
Let's see. So the question was, oh, I got it. So the question was, do cows make a special kind of sound to show that they're in estrus or coming into estrus?
So, is that the right question, Paul?
Yeah, well, I knew what the question was. I was just trying to see if you guys knew, but yes, sir, that is the question, Ryan.
It took a second to remember. So, I guess my explanation would be, or my answer would be, no, cows don't make a special sound. Mainly because cows are vocal all year round and they make the same sounds all the time, and they're not in estrus all the time, all year long. And so, I would say no, they don't make a special sound just because they're always talking and using those sounds all the time. And that you can tell a cow is an estrus, or a bull can tell because of the scent or the smell that the cow's putting off.
Man, that's a great answer.
Yeah, Ryan's been studying the Elk Nut
Hey,
app.
That's a great answer. Actually, I think that is in there like that, but and so just so listeners understand how, anybody could say, oh, that's what this represents or that's what that represents. So what you really need is proof, and the proof is for those of us that have done the research and the study and have seen and heard specific sounds used throughout the entire year, not just saying that this happens. And so, really the primary sound we're referring to is what many refer to as the estrus scream or the estrus buzz. And you'll see, and the reason I mention those is because you'll see a lot of that on a variety of videos. And many of the well-known individuals out there will refer to this. When you hear this sound, it's a cow coming into estrus, and she's alerting other bulls in the area that she is going to be near breeding. And so it's easy to say that. It's easy to say, oh, that's what this means. Why? Well, because I heard it right during September when I had bulls bugling, and this sound, I could hear a cow making it, blah, blah, blah. And it's easy to say that's how it fits. But when you look at the whole picture, and that's how you have to look at things, you have to look at the whole picture. Okay, if this estrus buzz, I refer to it as a contact buzz. In past, I have referred to it as an estrus buzz. But I changed it probably 2 years ago because I didn't want to be confused with these other folks that were saying this was a sound that a cow would use as she was nearing to be bred. When this sound can actually be heard any time of the year, just like Ryan mentioned, and I've heard guys say, well, you know what? When I use it, the bulls were just screaming everywhere. Well, guess what? I've had the same thing happen with just a standard cow sound. Nothing. And just have them go nuts. Is that all of a sudden an estrus sound too that I need to be bred? No, not even close. No more than excited or regathering. Come on over here. You can have bulls answer and respond to all those sounds the same as a contact buzz. So what does the contact buzz actually represent to the elk? How do we know what that answer is? That means you have to have experienced that sound throughout the entire course of a year, not just September. I have had cows use this sound the entire year. And one of the things that really comes to mind, I actually have quite a few videos of this too, with them being used in June, July, August, not really before that because I really wasn't out there messing with them that much, in the near future, meaning like the last 10 years. But a lot of the June, July stuff, when they're not even close to being, in estrus or in heat. And you can definitely go out and listen to cows make this sound. And every time I see it happen, I've had it actually happen to me when I actually bumped some cows accidentally, and man, the lead cow would just fire this buzz off. And for those wondering what that is, I'm going to make that sound for you. Right now, I'm going to give you a standard cow sound or mew so you can see the difference between that and the one that's called either the estrus buzz, estrus scream, or contact buzz. All these mean the same thing. So here's a standard cow sound. Okay, everybody's heard those. Now I'm going to go to the buzz sound. So some folks out there may have heard it and didn't realize that's what they were hearing. Some opposite, they knew what it was. But here is the sound. So you can see a big difference between that sound and a standard cow sound. You can hear that little nasally buzz in there. Can you guys hear it over there? Okay?
Oh yeah, it came through really clearly.
Okay, so you can see the difference in that. And see, cows are just like anybody else. The more the alarm or the alert or the urgency, they can get a higher note or a higher volume out of it. Like if we were talking to somebody and we raised our voice because of an annoyance or someone's antagonizing us and we're getting frustrated or an action isn't taking place from what we're saying, this is what cows can do. As a situation takes place, I spooked these cows. It was an accident. I was watching like 8 or 9 of them. They were moving around. They weren't even 35, 40 yards away. And I've been watching for 10 or 15 minutes. I watched the main ones move out of the way. And we're talking end of June, July. And I was setting cameras is what I was doing. And I watched them go through and I didn't see a cow to my right. It was a younger cow. And all of a sudden there she was. She saw me and she froze. And I saw some other cows right behind her, just a few yards. And then all of a sudden, a more mature cow that I could see over there started hitting me with that buzz. And as soon as she did, all those cows gathered together and they started putting distance between me, started filtering through the timber. And as she went through there, I could hear it in several other instances. A couple other cows chimed in, letting everything know. So there was a lot more elk there than I was actually visually seeing, which is real common at that time because they're in large groups. But you could hear them just hammering that buzz and off they went. They gathered them together. That's why I call it a contact. Get over here. Come on over this way. And if it's an issue behind it, they will speak it much faster and much more repeated and one after another. And it's showing the alarm or the urgency to get out of there. There's a possible issue or threat and to follow the group out of there. And now my goodness, especially the last 10 years, I have seen this happen so many times. But the point is it's a good sound because this sound means for them to gather together or come over. When you hear when you hear them use it in a way where urgency is involved, as opposed not to, here is non-urgent right here. And she's calling them, getting them over here. Come on. But when there's something wrong, they're not only making that sound, they are leaving as they're doing it. And you'll hear them more of a, see, they're putting much more frantic out of there now. Come together and let's get out of here. That's what you'll see. And it's the same as bugling or anything in life, even when people talk. If there's an emergency type situation where you're wanting people to act right now, hurry up, let's get out of here, let's go. Other than, hey, come on over here. You see, there's a difference. And that's what those elk are doing. So basically, to answer that question, no, This is not a breeding sound. When you can hear it all these other months outside of September, you must realize that what you wanted it to be so bad doesn't make it right. No way, no matter how you want to convince yourself that's what that sound is, because you hear bulls responding to it, doesn't matter. They're communicating with other elk in that area, whether there's nursery groups together and elk are running all over the place. This is how they communicate and keep track of one another there. This has nothing to do whatsoever of a bull needing to come over and take care of this cow and breed her. No, nothing whatsoever. So in that long explanation, basically, Ryan, you're absolutely 100% on, but I want people to know why, a sound is defined the way it is, not just saying, no, it's not, a breeding type sound.
Right. So, Paul, staying on that subject for a second, I think it goes hand in hand with what we've been, trying to get listeners to kind of grasp the concept that you've been talking about understanding the emotion behind the communication. And it sounds to me like, from what you were saying, there's a lot of similarities between, um, you know, bulls use the bugle more, cows are using that cow mew, but they're still charging up what they're saying with emotion to communicate a certain message, just like a bull might with a bugle, right?
Exactly. It's the same thing. And that's what's so nice. As people start wanting to get into elk hunting, you have a lot of new elk hunters these days. And when I say new, I mean, hey, I think I'm going to go elk hunting this year. I see it all over YouTube and I see it on these elk hunting forums. And so you get a lot of people that are showing a keen interest of expanding the horizons from their turkey hunting or their deer hunting or their duck and goose hunting. And so as these people start entering this realm that many of us are used to doing for years, we have to backtrack a lot of times because guys like myself, we take things for granted. And we want to be able to help these newer guys coming in, guys, women, children, whatever it is, husband, wife teams. And so understanding how the elk vocalization can be represented by us and how the elk represent the sounds we're trying to practice and use. It's really important. It's just like learning golf. You want to be able to learn the fundamentals correctly, how to hold the club, which club is used for a certain distance. And that's what you're doing with the elk sounds. So as newer hunters come along, the better grasp they have on elk behavior and the sounds, they're going to notice that when they start putting boots on the ground in the woods, all this starts making sense. And they're going to cut their learning curve off by years and years and years. Whereas guys like myself, we were the grinders out there, didn't have anybody to teach us. And so we're trying to show these guys, these men and women and children to shorten that learning curve and understand what we're willing to share, that it's taken us, over 40 years of trial and error to bring this, to their ears and their eyes. It's just going to help them that much more to enjoy the success that many of us had, that maybe we had to wait years before we were able to see it, where right now they can go this year. People can go this year if they'll take this knowledge in and actually have a really exciting and great hunt, and even the possibility of putting an animal on the ground. It's like anything in this world. You will get out of it what you put into it. It really is. It's just the way of life.
Paul, with that being said, talking about the new hunter, we've actually been, getting a lot of comments and people asking questions about, where do you get started as a new hunter? How do you blow a reed as a new hunter? And asking a lot of new hunter questions. And so, kind of the next step that we'd like to go into is learn some of your tricks when it comes to making some of these sounds so people aren't in the dark. And a lot of this information is on the app, but just kind of have you go through, where to place the mouth reed if you don't mind, and maybe some of your tricks of the trade when it comes to making these sounds.
Yeah, and you're right. So much of this is on the app. But I realize that there's probably going to be individuals that are listening to this podcast that don't have the app. And, that's cool. We don't care if you have the app or not. We still want to help you, regardless of who you are. But as far as using a mouth reed, I would say the very first thing you need to do is to make sure you choose a single reed. Make sure it's a light tension reed. One like Phelps Game Calls, he has the black amp, which is a soft one. I think the gray amp would work real well. Rocky Jacobson has the mellow yellow. It's another one. It depends on who you're trying to represent or support there. It really doesn't matter. But those reeds really will help you to have that real soft latex which means they're very user-friendly reeds. So picking the right reed is very, very important. Pick a 1/2-inch reed. I don't care if you have a small pallet, a medium pallet, or a large pallet. Everyone can use a 1/2-inch reed. And calls like the Black Amp and the Mellow Yellow, they are the 1/2-inch reeds. So once you have the right reed, you want to set it on your tongue. Well, generally before you do that, I like chewing it up and nibbling it. This reed I'm using right now, that's exactly what I did. I just pulled it out of a package. And so I chewed it all up. I nibbled on it for about 30 seconds with saliva. And what that does is it helps that loose tag or tape to mold to the palate. So it becomes like a soft, wet t-shirt, like a cloth t-shirt. That's all it really does. And so you don't want to get that, and that's air passing over. Yeah, exactly. We've all experienced it, haven't we?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we've all been there. So when guys start seeing that or getting that feeling or sensation of the air doing that, you're not damming the air up enough. So make sure you've got it real pliable. And then what I do is I set it on my tongue and I'm trying to put it in a pretty much an exact location. And so what I'm doing is taking the horseshoe opening of the reed, I put the caul on my mouth and I stick it up into position. Now, so once know that position, you want to take the horseshoe opening or the latex part, and it should sit real close to your front teeth and your gum line. What you're going to do is take your tongue, and you can take the tip of your tongue and touch where your top teeth and gum line meet. Slide that back about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, and you'll feel the cleft just before it goes into your palate. You'll see that you'll feel the ridge. That's where the front of the reed goes. So now when you know the front of the reed goes there, and then it tips up in about a 20-25 degree angle, and the rest of that tape or loose tag that you've chewed up that vinyl will seat and mold to the roof of your mouth. And when it does, all the air will pass between the latex and the top of your tongue. So once you have that in the right proximity, then you take your tongue again and touch your bottom teeth where it meets the gum line. And as you do that with your reed in your mouth, the center of your tongue will access the center of that reed automatically. So there's a few people out there that like using the tip of their tongue for that. And if you can control it that way, that's fine. But for the ease of use, and you throw it in and you're going, you see how simple that is. I've laid it on my tongue, stuck it in position, and I let the center of my tongue make contact. And now I'm breathing air. I'm doing none of that. All I'm doing is giving a breath of air, almost like I'm breathing with a little bit of tension from the center of my tongue on that latex. And that's where I start getting my notes. Now, if I were to put this reed in and I were not to put enough tension on it, I would get this sound. You notice how it's vibrating the reed. See, I don't have enough tension. So by doing that sound, all I have to do, same airflow, is now put a little more tension with my tongue. You notice how I take the vibration out and get to a note. Now I'm just dropping it. With my voice, I'm going, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all I'm doing, except I'm keeping the reed in my mouth and my tongue on the reed. So by practicing those little things, it will really help you a lot to be able to at least get the right spot, the right position for it. And just remember, when guys are using a reed, you don't want to clamp any of that tape or tag down with your teeth. None of your molars or back teeth or anything clench that tape. This reed sits freely. It puts on your tongue and fits up into the palate. And then the side of that tape or the tag kind of rests against the side of your teeth. It doesn't matter. Even if it bothers you in the beginning, it's because you're not used to it. And so none of this reed or tape should be sticking out the front of your mouth. 100% of it should be inside your mouth. If you have any of it sticking out, you don't have it in the right place. If you have your teeth clenching that tape anywhere, this is not right. You don't want to do that. Your tongue should be the only thing holding it in position, as well as the suction that will happen when that reed fits in your mouth and you start playing with it. As you guys probably are well aware of, as it sits up there, it wants to clamp itself in there and mold to your palate. And then your tongue, of course, just keeps everything there because you're using the center of it to produce sounds. So, basically those are the positions. And yes, like anything, you can move it a fraction left, right, or up and back a hair. And always make sure if you're using a dome or a shed type roof, that always goes up towards your palate or toward the sky. The latex part touches your tongue in every case. And so just so you put the reed in right, especially for newer hunters, I know more veteran hunters probably laughing at that, but there's a lot of new guys that, they don't know. They've never used them that much. And so anyway, that's how that would work right there.
So to go with that, Paul, the reason I'm asking this is because I used to think this way. But what would you say to the hunters that say, "Oh, I can't use a mouth braid because I always gag"? That used to be me, and you've proven me wrong on this. But what would you say to those guys?
And that's a good question. And that would be, if you can brush your teeth without gagging, you can use a mouth reed. And it's so funny because what's that?
I do brush my teeth, Paul.
But do you gag? and I'll have guys say, well, when I brush the back of my tongue, I gag. Well, my God, who wouldn't? I mean, anybody would. But if you're brushing your teeth just normal, top, bottom, sides, everything, and you don't gag, and you can do it, pretty easily, like a normal person, that doesn't have that gag reflex, you can use the reed. But what happens is, I've seen this so many times, and guys, you have no idea how many emails and PMs and phone calls I'll get, and they'll say, I just bought a couple reeds, and I just can't use reeds, and I find out they've only been trying them for 15 minutes or half an hour. But people don't realize, if you're going to learn to use a mouth reed, it's going to take you 4 to 6 weeks of like 10 minutes every day before you finally get comfortable with using a reed in your mouth. It's not like a bite and blow call where you're blowing a duck call, or you have a bite and blow, even a cow call or anything, goose call. I don't care what. They make all kinds of apparatuses these days. And yes, they are easier to blow, but they think the mouth reed should be similar. You throw it in just minutes, you should be making some sounds, but that's not true. You're trying to use tongue muscles that have no memory. They have no idea how to make that sound. And so people blow too hard, or they don't have it sealed up in their roof, or some have a 5/8 call, or they have a double or triple reed because they think a reed is a reed, and it's not. You need a very light tensioned, user-friendly latex so that when you start barely touching that latex and throw a little air, you're getting some squeaks out of it. You're getting some sounds. And in time, after even a week, you'll start polishing it up, and you're going to control those sounds. Believe me, we've all made all these little duck calls and all kinds of yelps and weird sounds with them until we started to control it. And then you'll be very happy, because once you start getting your first elk sounds out of it, you'll know what you did to accomplish that, whether it's a cow sound or bugle. And everybody should start with cow sounds. They're the easiest ones to learn. And then you play with it. And when I say play with it, you're taking a reed and you're kind of doing this, and you're dropping it, do all kinds of things with it. So you see the function of your tongue and how it can change pitch and whine, length, short, volume, or you can just start going real low, or you can go loud. My point is you need to get control of the latex before you can move on to bugles or grunts or chuckles. But everybody I know wants to go from cow calls to bugles and grunts and chuckles in minutes. They really do. And I'll tell you, one of the key things about using a mouth reed when you're going to mess with cow sounds or bull sounds or any sound out there, one of the things that will help you a ton, understand the sound you're trying to make, what the definition is. It will help you to put the right feeling and the right emotion behind it. If you're going to be like 99% of the hunters out there, and I mean this seriously, there's guys out there that make some of the greatest elk sounds in the world, but you have no idea what they're doing with. They don't know the meaning behind them. And so it's so important to say, okay, I'm going to just make a social cow call. So mentally, physically, in your mind, what that sound represents. The message being sent to the elk when I use it. So I'm going to now use a regathering sound. So now all of a sudden, what this means to the elk. This means some are feeding out too far, or they're off in the timber and they can't see them. And so they're trying to relocate and bring them back. So you're putting the right feeling and emotion behind it. Are you using a contact buzz? You see, are you answering a bull that has invited a cow to come over because he's heard you? You're answering him, letting him know, just like if your son or daughter was missing out there and you finally found them as you're calling their name. And when you finally hear each other, do you guys go, oh, I'm just over here. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've been gone an hour. I mean, everybody's so excited. You see the tone in their voice, the emotion, how they're responding to each other as they get closer and closer and closer. This is what elk can do. So see, you're putting the right notes behind it and the emotion or cadence of the call, of the sound that's representing that message. And when you can practice that way, it makes your practice so much more fun. It's the same as bugling, same as why does a bull grunt? Why does he chuckle? You see, once you understand the definitions the message being sent. It will help you to put the right feeling behind it. The same as a bugle, location bugle. Are you going to use a nervous grunt? Are you going to use a roundup? Are you going to use a challenge, a lip ball? Why do elk use those specific sounds? That's what we as hunters need to know. The same as you need to know the distance for a 9-iron, 8-iron, 7-iron, 6-iron, 5-iron if you're golfing. If you don't, yeah, you can go out there and play golf, but you're going to pretty much suck at it. You're not going to do any good. You don't know the right club. You're just, I don't care. I'm going to grab this. I mean, it's just not going to work.
Right.
So it's the same thing with elk sounds. Use the right sound for the right time. In other words, you're going to use sounds that elk expect to hear under a certain situation or a certain encounter. And so it's when you're learning as a newer caller or even an older one, if you don't understand the message you're sending or what you're hearing, it's all a crapshoot. It really is. You're just hoping and guessing, and you're going to be like the guys you see on a lot of these videos where, well, the elk just weren't responsive today, or they're not aggressive enough, or it's just too darn hot out there. It's too cold. It's snowing. I mean, they have so many excuses, but it's really them. They don't know how to understand the sound that's being used, or if they hear it 1 or 2 bugles, but they have no idea what to do with it because they're not reading the situation. They're not evaluating what they're hearing or the emotion or the tone of the sound. You see, all this, it's up to us as elk hunters to understand this thing. If it was so easy to walk out and give some cow calls and bugles and they come trampling us over, it'd be a different story, but it's not like that. So as the newer elk hunter, grasp this, understand that you need to know this part of elk behavior as you start progressing during your hunts, and from year to year to year, it's really going to start to sink home. You will see, yes, using a mouth read is important, but understanding the sounds you're trying to imitate are far greater.
Oh, that's really good, Paul. So continuing on the beginner line of thought, I see a lot of posts and comments from various kind of beginner elk hunters that are trying to figure out where to hunt elk. Maybe they're coming in from out of state, or maybe they're new and don't have, a mentor to introduce them to some areas. Do you have some advice for these folks kind of from a general perspective about finding elky areas in advance of their season?
Yeah, and I'm going to assume that we're referring to over-the-counter, do-it-yourself public land stuff, not
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, not a draw tag where, there's more elk than people.
Land. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and that's usually what most of us are hunting. And so that's kind of the avenue we seek out is that, okay, if I'm going to go to an area that I have never hunted before, but I want to go elk hunting there. And as a new person, there's a couple little things they want to make sure. They want to make sure that they're not hunting an area where elk winter, it's their winter range, or they're migrating to, because what's going to be there in September?
Not
Like
elk.
few to no elk. I mean, they're not there at that time. And so, when they're looking at, stats or any kind of information for a particular area, and it's even good if they know nothing at all. We're talking about people just know nothing. And if they're going to call a biologist or fishing game or whatever, they want to make sure that they're hunting areas that elk are living there at the time of their hunt. We have local elk. Yes, they may migrate out of those areas, just like they migrate out of the areas I hunt. Almost every area I've ever hunted in all 7 states, these elk migrate out of those areas and leave it once the snows get so deep. But throughout the entire summer, or I would even say late spring, all through summer and into fall, these elk live in these areas. And so you want to make sure that when you choose an area, that's the kind of area. And believe it or not, this is most areas. This isn't an isolated case. The isolated case would be the winter range. And usually when you start talking winter range, you're going to notice that the elevations are low. Much lower. They're anywhere from 2 to 4,500 feet, depending on the area in the state. But it's more like that. But once you start getting into the 5,500 to 12,000, usually those are areas that are holding the elk during our hunting times. And so if you get to an area and you're looking at a stat that says 6 elks were killed last year in this area and it had 15 hunters, you can bet that's probably a winter range and they just got lucky that something was even around. And there's just no hunters there. And we're talking over the counter. So usually that's what you're looking for. But mainly once you find your areas, which are very easy to do through just a couple of calls to say, yes, elk live in those areas, then all I'm really doing is looking the elk country over. That's all I'm doing. And to date, I've never made that call that asks, are they migrating there? I mean, I already know that they are going to be at these extreme low elevations in nearly any state. So most of the time I'm looking at stuff that's 6,000 feet and higher anyway, because very few areas that get snows and heavy winters are below that. I mean, they're all from 6,000 up, even 5,000 up. It depends. Where I live here in Idaho, 5,000 feet can have a lot of snow. Elk migrate out for the most part. You always get caught up, that just happens no matter where you live, when elk will migrate. But the point is that when I'm looking at areas in that 5,500, I would say to 8,000 or 9,000 feet. In Colorado, it could be 12,000. I'm looking for areas that are roadless. I'm looking for areas that have few trails. When I say roadless and few trails, I don't mean none in the unit. I mean, they're far enough apart. They're miles apart where I can look for areas that are void, or I can get away from roads and trails. And the reason I say this is because this is where most of the pressure comes from. And the more rugged the country I look for, where it's impossible to get an ATV in, you couldn't even get them if you wanted to, because of the heavy dark timber or the steepness of the mountain. And so once I look for areas like that, I start really doing my homework, finding those more secluded spots. And I usually will do this through several avenues. Google search can be like number one, just to get a really good view. And when you're doing a Google search, usually you're going to be on an imagery format of it. And then you can overlay it, because a lot of times when you do imagery, it won't show you roads, trails, or names of anything. It just shows you imagery, which is really good. You can zoom in and out and you can get a good lay of the land. But then I like doing an overlay with the topographical, and they all have it, whether it's Google Earth or any other function. And once you put the overlay on it, it now shows you all the road, trail systems, every little creek, the name of the peak of the mountain. It'll even show you little nameless ponds and lakes on these as you zoom in and out. And so once I have the overlay on it, now I can really sink my teeth into, okay, I see trails running up here, I see a road here, and I see all these areas in here where there's no access. You have to walk, a mile or more from the nearest road or trail or skid road or whatever's out there to get into these areas that elk may be getting pushed to, because they can't hear anything from these roads or trails or skid roads. You see, if they get into these little secluded pockets. So that's what I'm looking for. And again, they're just kind of like spots for me to consider. So many times when I pick areas like this in areas I've never been to, and on my way to them, I'm bugling or calling my way, like we talked on previous podcasts. But I may find it before I ever get there. But even if I don't, once I get into those areas where I find these more secluded areas where elk will end up venturing into, that's what I do. I'm looking for those areas that most people don't want to hunt because they don't want to leave the trail. And so that's just it right there. The more ruggedness, the more steepness, the less trails, less roads. And you usually will start finding elk in those areas, whether they were pushed there or whether they just live there locally anyway.
Right. So from a geographical features perspective, Paul, each big game species kind of has certain things that they seem to like better, certain types of cover or feed or water situations. From your perspective and your experience elk hunting, what type of features are you looking for in terms of cover, feed, and water for this elk species in particular?
Definitely in the time of September, because it could change in the winter months, like you said.
And it does, even the side of the mountain. But for me, to tell you the truth, I don't care what elk eat. I could care less. I don't care what their favorite food is. None of that means anything to me, because when I'm going out there, I'm going for vocal elk. That's what I'm looking for. There's no grocery store out there. There's no Walmart. Elk, when some of these areas that I'm hunting, these bulls with these small groups of cows, especially this is really common on over-the-counter hunts, you're going to find that bulls can have anywhere from 3 to 15 cows during the peak rut times. It's very unusual to find bulls with more than 15 cows. Now, when you get to draw areas, or some really deep country, yes, you can find bigger cow groups with the bulls, but in most cases, it's pretty rare. So, because of that, I'm looking for those areas that are going to hold the elk. So when I go in, I'm not looking at a map going, oh, look at this meadow here. This must have the best feed in the world. Oh, how about this one? I don't care where they're eating. I'm calling. I'm moving and calling. And I don't know if I can drill that enough in people's heads to help them understand that. So many people are hunting, they're hunting food plots and everything else, and food is everything. But I don't care where the elk are eating. My sound carries so far that when I finally get a response, I mean, that's all I'm looking for. I'm getting over there and hunt that bull. That's it. Period.
Yeah.
I can tell where he is by the time of day. If I catch him within the first hour, he's very close to where he bedded and feeded and even watered during the night. Him and his cows, or if it's lone satellites, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's where they're at. Now, if I catch them anywhere from 9:30 on, I'm usually catching them where they're bedding. Anytime in between that first hour and 9:30, after the first hour and 9:30 or so in the morning, if they're traveling, to and from a feeding to a bedding area, because their bedding area in the daytime is different than their bedding area at nighttime. They have two different areas. And so I realize they're in transition then. So when I catch them after that 9:30 or so, I know they're either in their bedding area or very near it. And so I know I have to focus my sounds in areas that aren't sitting in the bottom of a meadow because they're not there at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock. They're not going to be there. They're going to be more up on the side of the mountain, sometimes 2/3 up, sometimes lower. They're on the benches. They're going to be in the cool areas. And it really doesn't matter if it's the north or northeast or northwest. Once in a while, we even catch them on the south faces of the mountain, even the heat of the day, because it's so littered with old growth timber. Believe it or not all old growth timber grows on the north face. It can grow anywhere. And so we catch these elk in these pockets where it's real cool. Sometimes there's moisture in there, sometimes there's not. But mostly I really look for northwest and northeast. That's what I really think on. I like west too. I know that about includes everything, but it's because I mean, if I told you the last 50 bulls that we killed, I'm telling you, it's a hodgepodge. It's a mixture. It's not like they're all over here or over there. They can be anywhere. And a lot of this is because of the fact that you have wolves, you have mountain lions, you have bears, you have hunting pressure. You just never know where they're going to be, so they get pushed. And it's nothing for an elk to bed on the side of a mountain and get up at noon, 12:30, 1 o'clock and relocate because the sun is starting to hit over where they're at. It was fine the first couple hours, but all of a sudden it's not as comforting because of the heat hitting them. And they can move as much as 25 feet, or they can move a quarter of a mile. You just never know. They'll move as little as possible. They don't want to go very far. They're still in their bedding frame of mind, unless it's peak rut and they're just screaming everywhere. But those days are few and far in between. And when you hit that, you don't care where they're at. You can hear them. There's no question whether you have to follow them or not. They're there. But my point is I really don't care what they're eating. I look up for approximate bedding areas, but I let my sound do the locating. Once I find them or I find fresh sign, for newer individuals who are willing to shoot any elk, cow, spike, raghorn, you can start finding a fresh sign and do those cold calling setups, creative cow calling setups. Those are your best bets to bring elk your way. But if you're after, 5 or 6 point bulls, then your target has become different. And so your sounds have to replicate that. You're looking for those type of elk. And so now we start, tailoring our calling to those types of bulls. So, but basically in a nutshell, I don't care what they eat. I mean, I'm going to find water almost anywhere. So my main line of thought is to go out there. If I took you two guys and we went hunting together, the three of us, we would go out and we would start covering ground and we're going to call, but I'm going to look the area over. I'm going to look, okay, nobody should be hunting anywhere in this span. Or maybe I have to go in a 10-mile span to find 4 or 5 really good areas that I'm going to find that are going to be away from roads and trails. And when I say away from roads and trails, sometimes it's only a half a mile. It's over a knob. That's all it takes, because no elk can hear them over that knob from the trail or road. Can't hear them at all. And so I will check those areas out. Maybe there's nothing. Maybe there's elk there. And so that's why it's really nice to have a lot of areas and to stay mobile. I'm not willing to go bivvy hunt in an area I'm very unfamiliar with and I'd have no idea where the elk are and go burn 3 or 4 days up that there's nothing there. I would rather go in real light. And if nothing is there, I get out and I try another area. Nothing there, I'm going to another area. So my pack is only 12, 15 pounds. It's very light and it keeps me mobile, and I'm going to find the elk that way. And this is what we do year in and year out. I mean, year after year after year, all of us. It works. So I'm trying to help people to appreciate that you don't have to go 5 to 10 miles in every time to hunt elk. And I'll tell you why people go deep. There's a really easy reason for it. When people go deep, the reason they do it is because most of those guys aren't very good at calling. And that's the truth. They really aren't. When you get into dumb elk are ones that aren't being pressured. They're not being harassed at all. Dumb elk represent a few calls, and here they come. And so when they start taking that same type of mindset and coming to where elk are a little more pressured, or they're only hearing a bugle or two, and they try this same little sequence, nothing happens. Positive, nothing. Look at some of the YouTubers, watch some of their videos, and once they start getting close like this to civilization or other hunters, and yeah, the elk are there, they can't call them in. It takes a certain kind of calling to pull those bulls in. And this is kind of what we were talking about previously. So what happens is these guys start going deeper and deeper and deeper. It's not because that's where the elk are. There's no elk before that. It's because what happens is not only maybe somebody's looking for a more mature bull and they feel they can get some more age, and that can happen. But in most cases, when guys are going deep, they're not taking anything any better than what we're killing everywhere else here. They really aren't. I mean, on over-the-counter tags, we're talking here. It's the same old 5 and 6 point bulls. There's nothing different, but they're going back where they're seeing no pressure. And yes, when an elk hears an elk sound back there, they are not used to being, burned. They're not suspicious about it. And so it's easier for guys to go deep. Elk are much more callable, but they're much harder to get out. You're going much, much deeper, and guys are doing it. Why? Because they're not willing to put the time in to understand the elk language. They're like, oh, that's what's way too hard. I'm going to go do this. And most of them go in and don't kill anyway. Some do. And I say that because look at the stats for over-the-counter hunts. It's well under 10% just about anywhere you go. So it's not like once you go back there, it's an automatic thing. You still should understand elk behavior, what the sounds represent to them, so that you know how to use that in a positive aspect, because it's just going to raise your odds.
Awesome, Paul. I mean, it's kind of looks like everything goes back to, speaking the language and understanding, what these elk are saying and being able to respond in the right manner and in the right emotion. So at the right levels.
And that's what it is right there. It's all about emotion, because, a bugle is a bugle.
Right.
A cow call is a cow call. But when they start changing the cadence or the excitement or tone behind it, that's how their message changes. Just like when people are talking, then they raise their voice and they're yelling, then they're screaming. This is what we're doing as humans. But animals are doing the same thing. And so when you start reading the emotion, let's say in a bull's bugle, you can see how it is starting to be enhanced or intensify. And again, it all comes back to the emotion behind it. And that is what's sending their mindset or their message. And once you understand that, how to use that and how to read it, oh my goodness, it doesn't matter where you're going to go. It really doesn't. You're going to take bulls just like we do, that, like I've said on every podcast so far, I mean, we kill most of all these within 2 miles. So anybody can do it.
Well, awesome, Paul. We really appreciate you. A lot of good stuff there. And I think we, helped a lot of beginner elk hunters with this episode, and I'm really excited to put that out there. So thanks again. And like always, we want to end our podcast with the question of the day from Paul. So what do you got for us today, Paul? Let's see if you can stump Taylor for next time.
No, this isn't about stumping. This is just, trying to educate people to realize that elk just don't have a language. But some of these things, like this question here, and that'd be great. I am actually pretty sure that Taylor already realizes what the answer is to this one, just because he's a studier. And you did good too, Ryan. But here's the thing. Okay, one of the things that, especially years ago, really surprised people was, do cows bugle? And some feel they do, some feel they don't. But if cows bugle, what is the difference between their bugle and a bull's bugle? Does it represent a different message? If it does, what is it? There you go.
That's good. I will look forward
to bugle.
Yeah. We'll look forward to talking about that on the next podcast.
We'll write it down too.
Okay, guys, that sounds good.
Well, thanks, Paul. Have a good night.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.